agreement that we reach needs to tick all three boxes.
Hear that? Let me finish Brexit, the Prime Minister proclaims. A final deal to smooth out tensions over Northern Ireland does now feel seriously close.
I think the talks on reforming the protocol are inching towards a conclusion.
Yet, shock horror, the Conservative Party might be hard to convince.
Ignore the howls of indignation from those on his side who will never take yes for an answer. Why doesn't he just get on with it?
Brexit trade frictions and freezing temperatures in Morocco are just two of the reasons behind this. Empty shelves and limits on what we can buy in the shops. The Environment Secretary ended up suggesting we savour homegrown veg instead.
It's important to make sure that we cherish the specialisms that we have in this country. A lot of people would be eating turnips right now.
Tempted by turnips? The bigger question for us this morning, can Rishi Sunak tempt his party and the Northern Irish Unionists to back his likely deal?
Dominic Raab, the Prime Minister's number 2 and fellow Brexiteer, is here. But how would Labour approach those Brexit talks? The man who'd be Labour's Foreign Secretary is with us as well, David Lammy. And the race to replace Nicola Sturgeon as Scotland's First Minister is on. The Scottish Health Secretary and wannabe SNP leader Humza Yousaf joins us live. And with me at the desk, the boss of the Civil Servants Union, Dave Penman, Thomasina Myers, cook, writer and restaurateur who has plenty to say about those empty shelves, and George Eustace, who knows a thing or two about the food industry as the former Environment Secretary. And the agreement, as we understand it, is broadly done. But there's a different question. Will Rishi Sunak have the authority to get the deal over the line with his party? There's lots of speculation on that on the front pages. Let's take a look. He promises to the Sunday Times to be the Prime Minister who will get Brexit done. But the Mail has a different line, Conservative anger over how the King got involved in all of this, if indeed that did happen. Some of the other papers, The Observer, a disturbing story about the number of the police who faced criminal charges. The Sunday Mirror has the story of a Ukrainian boy, but an interesting story we'll get to later on the front page of the Sunday Herald in Scotland. Muslim leaders will not endorse Humza Yousaf, who we'll be speaking to a bit later, and praise Kate Forbes, one of the other candidates, for talking openly about her religion. So there's a lot to talk about this morning, but let's get on with our panel. Welcome to all of you. George, here we are again. Your party poised once more to do battle over Brexit. We're expecting a deal, but we're also expecting a lot of argument. Do you think Rishi Sunak has got the authority to get the deal past his party?
Well, I'm certainly quite open to this because I was part of Boris Johnson's government that came up with something called the Command Paper in August 2021, put together by Lord Frost and a number of us contributed to that. It was a very good proposal, comprehensive proposal. It dealt with the EU's legitimate concerns, but it also had no truck with some of their sort of illegitimate game playing and banning seed potatoes, for instance, that sort of thing. And if what Rishi's managed to do is to land an agreement that's in that sort of territory, we should absolutely get behind it, because that's what Boris Johnson would have done, it's what Liz Truss would have done, it's what Theresa May would have done. That's what we should do.
Now, it's interesting because you were a Brexiteer, so those who are belly aching already, you're suggesting should get behind it.
Well, I think they should be much more open-minded to it. You know, we have to stop thinking that if there's a deal that's about to be done, it means we've been done over in some way. It could be that actually the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which is an entirely legitimate response to EU poor behaviour and intransigence and a surly approach to
very
these sorts of...
controversial, though. Not everybody agrees it's
well, there are twitchy lawyers who take a different view to me on this, but actually, if the EU, as they were saying, we're not going to even assess your seed potatoes. We're going to ban the English oat from being sold in Northern Ireland. We're not going to sort of engage in the withdrawal agreement in the spirit as intended. Then that was a legitimate response.
Well, let's see, lots of twitchy lawyers, might be lots of twitchy Tories as well. Now, Thomasina, as well as people will know you for MasterChef, but also you run a big business. You've got 13 restaurants around the country. When you listen to all this sort of politicking, and part of the impact of that has been empty shelves we've seen this week, how does it affect you when you're trying to get on with running a company?
Well, what I find frustrating about government is there's never a whole approach. So to talk about food, which is linked to climate, biodiversity, health, public health, which now costs us £74 billion a year, poor health, which is diet related. And there's no coherence of government, and we need systematic change. There's a time bomb we're sitting on in our food system, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. If we think cucumbers and tomatoes are bad, we are looking at way worse in the next decade.
That's fascinating, and later on we'll get the two of you to discuss that, because of course, George, as Environment Secretary, you were running that whole kind of system. Dave, this government, as we've already heard in a couple of minutes, has got a lot of challenges, but you represent many of the people who work for the government, and you found they've got a lot of challenges too. What's your union doing?
Yeah, so we've surveyed the senior civil service. That's told us that 1 in 6 have got concerns about the inappropriate conduct of ministers, bullying and harassment. Over 70% don't trust the system to deal with that. And the Prime Minister's had a chance to do something about this. He's refused to do so. He's refused to introduce an independent process for dealing with this. So we've written to the Health and Safety Executive calling for them to conduct an investigation.
But some of our viewers listening this morning think, look, politics is a tough business. People work under high pressure, they work under high stress. Is it really that bad?
Well, that's what our members are saying to us. They're telling us about the conduct of ministers. The scale of it is quite daunting. We're talking, as I say, about 1 in 6 in the last 12 months reporting inappropriate conduct from ministers across over 20 government departments. Civil servants are work at the heart of government as well. They know it's tough. They work 7/24 as well. So the fact that they're calling this out, I think, indicates we've got a really serious problem.
Okay, we'll talk more about the findings of your research a bit later on. All three of you, thank you very much for now, but more hard work for you later on. And of course, we want you to be involved in our conversations here as well. We love hearing from you, and your emails, your tweets on the hashtag BBC Laura Kay, or emails at kuenssberg@bbc.co.uk are part of our conversation too. But first, some have called it a really nasty hangover from the Brexit talks, sorting out the protocol we've just been talking about, those post-Brexit trading arrangements. Now, they matter practically if you live in or do business with Northern Ireland, where businesses are bound by some different trade rules so that the border with Ireland could be kept open. But this issue also matters symbolically a great deal for Rishi Sunak and the government, desperate to move on from the whole Brexit conversation which has divided the Conservative Party. But can he? Well, Dominic Raab is Rishi Sunak's number 2, and he's with us this morning, and former Brexit Secretary, of course, is on your CV. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it we're going to see a deal in the next few days?
I'm not sure I'd put it on a scale of 1 to 10. There are always different bits of the jigsaw that need to be put in place, and you know, Laura, we've been talking about this for years. There's no deal done until the whole deal's done. But I think we've made progress, and the critical area we've made progress is, and you talked about the issues affecting businesses, not just businesses from one community, but all communities in Northern Ireland, in doing that critical trade with the rest of Great Britain, is to make sure that we shift away, as the command paper that George Eustace talked about, from an approach which is checking every consignment going in from Britain to Northern Ireland to what's called an intelligence-based approach. So if there's a real problem and it looks like goods are going on from Northern Ireland, they are checked, but we don't have, if you like, a tick box approach. Likewise, just to complete the piece, I think if we can move and persuade the EU, as we've been trying for years, to, in terms of protecting their equities, which we would recognise, to a market-based surveillance approach, which effectively means they look at what's happening in the Republic with goods that go to Northern Ireland in case there's a risk of them going into the wider single market. And if we can achieve that, it will be a massive win.
But it sounds like both sides are pretty resolved now that there is a deal there to be done that has pretty much been done. But it's harder then, potentially, for you to get it through your party. If there is a deal, can you confirm to your colleagues and also to our viewers that MPs will have a say, there will be a proper vote on a deal?
Yes, MPs will will have the opportunity to express themselves on the deal.
So there will be a vote, to be completely clear. That won't be just a debate or a nod through, there will be an actual vote.
Well, I don't think anything ever gets nodded through Parliament. and the reality is the details will be brought forward in the usual way. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. I understand what you say, and there is a degree of quiet confidence about the progress being made, but we're not there yet.
There will be a vote.
The Parliament will have its ability to express itself.
If the DUP, who the Northern Irish Unionists who've been most concerned about all of this, don't vote for the deal, will you withdraw it?
Well, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. I'm
It's a
confident.
hypothetical question, it's a practical,
Well, no, because-
real question that
No,
confronts
because
you
you're
right
saying
now.
if we get a deal, if the DUP, I'm not going to get in the ifs and buts game. Well, I can tell you where we are right now. Talk to the facts I know. There's been a shift in the approach. We recognise the equities of the EU, the legitimate ones, but I think it's also fair to say that they've moved. This approach to intelligence-based checks, not tick box for every consignment, market surveillance, and I think also a critical issue of this is going to be, at the start we talked about what's the impact on businesses, also consumers in Northern Ireland of all communities. I think about actually, if there are any new rules that would apply in relation to Northern Ireland, it must be right that there's a Northern Irish democratic check on that. And again, that would mark a significant shift in the paradigm of the arrangements, and I think that's good news.
But some of your colleagues wonder why, with the Conservatives pretty consistently now 20 points behind in the polls, with the questions therefore about Rishi Sunak's authority, they wonder why he's picking this kind of fight. I mean, is it naive or is it unusually courageous?
Are you talking about it as if the politics should define this? This is a question
But
of
the
the
politics will,
ultimate.
it will decide whether or not you can do this.
Of course, and doing the right thing the right way for all communities in Northern Ireland, protecting the Good Friday Agreement, which has come under pressure from the Northern Ireland Protocol. Frankly, if you ask about the politics, fulfilling our manifesto commitment on Brexit. I think in all those three areas, what the Prime Minister is seeking to do as a statesman is get the deal that will resolve these issues, particularly whether it's for businesses, whichever community, but also the average citizen of Northern Ireland in the shop of
you've
consumer.
made that point, but the politics of it, like it or not, and many of our viewers find it very frustrating. The politics of it do determine whether or not it will come to pass. And we all remember 2018. This is what did for Theresa May. You resigned over this
Exactly.
as Brexit Secretary. Do you, Rishi Sunak, think it's going to be easy this time?
It was never easy, but as you say, I resigned over the deal, including explicitly, if you look back at my resignation letter, my fears about the Northern Ireland Protocol. This would be, if we can get it over the line, we're on the cusp, we've made great progress, we're not there yet, but it would be a really important